system all the way through. Police, judicial services, everything, it's all involved. Parliament, MPs, everything, they're all corrupt. You get Prime Ministers corrupt. So how can we tell our children to bring them up straight and narrow when everybody above them was corrupt?
Peter Lynch, 61, a proud grandfather and father of 4, was sentenced to 2 years, 8 months in prison. His so-called crime? Raising his voice and holding a banner in defence of what he believed. Branded a far-right thug by the media and Keir Starmer, Peter was thrown into a brutal prison system among violent criminals. But the real justice, he paid the ultimate price. Alone, isolated from family he cherished, Peter took his own life in a cold, unforgiving cell. His voice may have been silenced, but his sacrifice will echo through history. May he rest in peace. It's September 2024. There's been trouble on our streets. The government and legacy media tell us one thing, social media and citizen journalists tell us something else. What we do know is the British people are angry. What's ignited this anger? What is going on? And are we seeing lawfare waged on the British people with a whole new level of intensity? I'd have liked to have been at Runnymede, England to make this film. Why Runnymede? Because it's where King John was made to sign the Magna Carta over 800 years ago. The Magna Carta is a document designed to shackle the power of tyrants. A document that makes it clear that everyone, including the King, who was the authority in the land at the time, is subject to the law. And the law is to be applied without fear or favour. A document that has inspired freedom-loving people around the world. A document to protect free-born English men and women from the abuse at the hands of tyrants. How fast and how far our nation has fallen. Now, we looked at the architecture of a totalitarian state in Lawfare, the film we launched on 1st of June this year. Two-tier policing, a politicised judiciary, a controlled media, and dissenting voices being crushed. These are just some of the pieces that the Conservatives put in place, working hard to build their utopian totalitarian state. New legislation, arrests for hurtful words, thought crime debanked, fired. This has all been the case for a few years now. And digital programmable money, mass surveillance, social credit scores, 15-minute cities, pay per mile to drive. Yes, the ULEZ infrastructure is already in place for that. Centrally controlled food supply. All these things will follow soon. More tax, less freedom, and prison for anyone who objects. But right now, we have a new Labour government, and we could not have imagined how quickly and vigorously these new totalitarians, this morally bankrupt, communist, bewildered, one-term Labour government would have set about implementing their evil plans. We explained previously how totalitarians use all the institutions of the state to create the facade of fairness, due process and a democracy. Is all a facade, while in fact they seek to destroy the very fabric of our society with their so-called progressive ideologies. Progressive ideologies that care not a bit for the oppressed, but use social justice as a veil for their hatred of the status quo. These totalitarians create division and chaos as the pretext to usher in their totalitarian utopia. Division and chaos, they both serve their purpose. And they create phantoms. imaginary foes. They turn the gullible against these imaginary demons. Why do they do this? Well, they have no power if they are scrutinised and exposed for what they are. They have no power if the people unite against them. And they are driven by three emotions. Three emotions lie at the heart of every totalitarian regime. And Keir Starmer's regime is no different. They're driven by lust, fear, and loathing. They are driven by lust, a lust for power. They will say and do anything to get it. They will say and do anything to keep it. This includes lying to us all. We won't take away the winter fuel allowance. We won't raise taxes. They get elected, they take away the winter fuel allowance from thousands and thousands of pensioners on as little as £13,000 a year.
But how can you justify it to viewers who feel like it is an attack on some people who've worked hard all their lives? They're not wealthy, they don't have money to spare, and this year, if it's cold, they're going to be looking at the thermostat and wondering if they can pay their bills.
According to Labour's Lucy Powell, they had to do this to stop the economy crashing.
That is a barefaced lie. Just £1.5 billion was saved, while £21 billion was voluntarily spent on public sector pay rises and foreign climate aid. When Ed Miliband excitedly promises to decarbonise the grid by 2030, again, he has been completely dishonest. As the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, innocently leaked some time ago, the true cost is going to be hundreds of billions of pounds with an almost impossible transformation of infrastructure.
There's a report, of course, commissioned by the Labour Party back in 2017, which forecast that thousands of pensioners could die, could literally freeze to death because of this change.
If we have the money, billions every year, to look after people who have given nothing to this country, why do we not have 1.2 billion to give money to people who have contributed to this system and who are now vulnerable and at the end of their lives, they're going into the last chapter of their lives?
They removed the energy price cap and prices jump by 10% for everyone. And if you've worked hard all your life, look out, because they're coming for your savings and your pensions. And don't forget, while he's robbing you, Free Gear Kia, he's had to declare more than £100,000 of freebies and gifts, more than any other MP in our country. And they say they've just found a £22 billion black hole in the nation's finances.
We have found a £22 billion black hole in the economy, and we've got to fix it. And that's what this is all about, making sure that we fix the foundations, and then having done that, that we can build the better future that pensioners and so many other people voted for in this election.
But they knew about the state of finances long before the elections. They just forgot to mention their plans. And when asked to spell out the details of the claimed black hole, they refuse. They're not telling. They won't. The dog ain't my homework. Ridiculous. They're not hiding the political choices they've made. They're actually proud of them. They can't use your taxes, remember our taxes, that's whose tax it is yours. They can't use them to help freezing pensioners this winter, but they can choose to send £3 billion a year of your tax to Ukraine to drag us towards war with Russia, instead of pursuing peace. They choose to send £6.4 billion a year of your taxes to support asylum and illegal migration. That's according to the Institute for Fiscal Studies. That's up 50% from last year and 6 times higher than in 2018. What's it going to look like next year or the year after? That's right, £6.4 billion in support of unilateral cultural suicide.
Angela Rayner has announced that she's abandoning plans to give British people, in brackets, who have paid their stamp or taxes, close brackets, priority council housing. We're going to allow migrants to get that. And if you thought that wasn't bad enough, I'd love your response to this, because this sent me today quite literally over the edge. If you're a terrorist and you wanted to get social housing, you were going to be banned under Labour's manifesto. That's been reversed as well today. So what we're saying, Ben, is we're going to allow millions of people to come into this country and take away homes or whatever from British people who need them. And that is not racist to make that comment. That is an absolute proven fact.
It is a proven fact. And that, amongst other reasons, is why people from all those deprived communities across the United Kingdom have been protesting against immigration for the last few weeks.
They choose to give away £8 billion of your taxes on climate aid. That's giving money to other countries to help them for their so-called climate challenges. £8 billion of your money, but can't keep the pensioners warm. They choose to spend trillions, yes, trillions of your taxes to pursue their own net zero wet dream, exporting our carbon emissions to China and India as we commit unilateral industrial disarmament and drive millions and millions into fuel poverty. Don't take my word for it. This is a co-founder of Greenpeace on climate change.
I say not only is carbon dioxide good, it is essential, and it's a good thing that we are putting some more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because it was running low before we came along. If we had definitive proof that CO2 was causing serious problems and we could prove it, don't you think they would write that down on a piece of paper somewhere so people could read it? They don't have definitive proof, period. I am firmly of the belief that the future will show that this whole hysteria over climate change was a complete fabrication.
And lastly, they'll smash those gangs that are transporting illegal migrants into the UK, costing us a 6.4 billion a year.
Round up, detain and deport illegal immigrants. That's what new Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has just promised to do. Well, do you believe the woman who held up a sign saying refugees welcome, closed the Bibi Stockholm and scraps Rwanda on day one?
Do you believe them? They're also driven by fear. They fear their loyalty to the World Economic Forum and its globalist and totalitarian agenda being exposed and revealed.
You have to choose now between Davos or Westminster.
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained.
They fear their incompetence and failures being exposed. Immigration policy, energy policy, foreign policy, every policy is a failure. They fear losing power. And they fear Islam. They're bewildered. They cower and submit to the demands of Islam out of fear of what might happen if they don't.
Hello, salam alaikum. My name is Phil Hutchinson and I am the Superintendent for Greater Manchester Police based in Oldham.
Salam alaikum. I'm speaking to you today because I want to reinforce my commitment to protect every member of our Merseyside community.
Yeah. I love it.
Of course, cowering in the face of Sharia-loving fanatics does not placate them. It emboldens them, you morons. Our government's appeasement is like feeding the crocodile and hoping it will eat them last. I think Churchill said that. And hiding things, covering things up. That doesn't solve our nation's problems. It's obvious to most of us by now, covering things up lets the problems grow and grow and grow. They've done that for the last 40 years with Pakistani rape gangs for the sake of community cohesion. And they're doing it now with mass migration and the Islamisation of the United Kingdom. But lying to cover things up doesn't create community cohesion. It does the absolute opposite. It stokes anger in British people.
There was no growth in our economy in July, and yet we continually get pumped with mass migration. I'm just going to pose this question. If migration makes us richer, why are we getting poorer? Our politicians can't just lie to us and hope we don't kick off. If the truth is so bad that we might protest if we knew about it, then maybe they should do something about the problem, instead of covering it up.
And the population know they're being ignored. And worse than being ignored, they're being condemned. This time by Prime Minister. How on earth did he end up with this job? Anyone who thinks mass immigration might not be such a great idea. Well, Tutik here, he's branded you, all of you, as far-right thugs and Nazis. Prejudged you as criminals. And his stormtroopers will come and arrest you shortly. The third emotion driving our so-called leaders is loathing. They don't believe in the nation state. They believe in open borders and cheap labour for global corporations. Their loyalties lie with the World Economic Forum. Tutik here has made that pretty clear already. They loathe our nation and its people. The obstacles to their globalist totalitarian utopia. They don't want to be challenged. They are terrified of scrutiny. They don't want their lies exposed, and they certainly don't want to listen to you, the British people.
Everybody's lives matter. Black lives matter. Trans lives matter. Refugees' lives matter. Except old people's lives don't seem to matter. Why on earth are they choosing this as their first hill to die on?
Will our so-called leaders ever recognise the legitimate concerns and grievances of the British people? Do our so-called leaders actually want to solve the problems, or do they want to use the problems? Problems they created, by the way, to take more power and take away more of your freedoms. You see, these Marxists weren't elected because British people wanted to be governed by Marxists. They were only elected because of the Tories spent 14 years failing everyone. They failed the British people, failing to be remotely conservative, failing to lower taxes, failing to control our borders, failing to protect our freedoms. And now in power, These Marxists want a state of perpetual chaos and division that they create. Divide and rule. There must be an enemy. There must be a reason to take action against these enemies of the state, and that action will always take away your freedom.
There's been a knife attack on a property in Hart Street. There are reports of it involving children, and I can now confirm that some of the patients have been taken to Alder Hey Children's Hospital, so that would suggest that those reports have indeed been accurate.
Here in the UK, 2 children have been killed in what police called a ferocious stabbing at a dance class in Southport in the northwest of England.
How many more children have died on our streets, Prime Minister? Time to change, Stormer. Come on, it's needed. How many more children? Is it mine next? Got your photos, off you go. Make the real change, Prime Minister. Make the real change! Our children! Go away!
Your daughter was killed. Not wanted! The person I held as a child, and you can't do shit.
So what actually happened in Southport? A man of Rwandan descent murdered 3 beautiful girls and stabbed 8 more children and 2 more adults. How did the government react? What did the machinery of the totalitarian state do? Well, you and I would hope something like this would get the government to stop and reflect for a minute. Why have these girls been murdered? Why is there so much knife crime? Why is there so much rape? Why are these so-called asylum seekers flocking to our shores? And what values and cultures are they bringing with them? Are their values compatible with ours? Are all cultures of equal merit? You and I would hope the government would ask why the peasants, that's us, you and me, why are the peasants revolting? No, don't be ridiculous. Reflecting is not a popular pastime with communists and tyrants. Admitting they're wrong is not a key competence of these tyrants. Apologising for destroying our nation, it's not going to happen. What this government actually did, well, firstly, they did everything they possibly could to cover up the basic facts, what you and I would call the truth. They said immediately it wasn't terrorism. How could they possibly know immediately the motive, that it wasn't terrorism? How could they know that? And how could stabbing young girls at a Taylor Swift dance studio not be terrorism? They said he was from Cardiff. Axel Ruddock Yabana. Yes, he's as Welsh as the daffodils. They looked for evidence he was mentally ill. I can help with that one. Yeah, he was mentally ill. Anyone who commits a crime like that is mentally ill. But exactly what kind of mental illness? And they published a picture of him, looking like an innocent little 12-year-old, and reported he was a choir boy. They made him the victim. They did all this because they don't want us knowing the truth. They manage the information.
Misinformation is dangerous. Social media is good, but it's also bad when people are using it in a way that could cause a riot, threats, intimidation. I think the government have really got to think long and hard about what they're going to do with social media and what are they going to put through Parliament as a bill to act. Misinformation is dangerous, and no misinformation or threats or intimidation should be allowed to be carried out on social media platforms.
That's their words. How absurd, how foolish, and how dangerous. And Kia, how is this working for you, managing the information? Do the government really believe their actions will help build a peaceful, prosperous and patriotic society? What about a cohesive society? Or are they so short-sighted, so hungry for power and so disdainful of the British people that they will use anything, no matter how awful, how tragic, they will use anything as an opportunity to implement their totalitarian agenda and crush anyone who speaks out against them? As we've said, these Marxists want a state of perpetual chaos. There must be an enemy to mobilise the population against, an enemy to divert attention away from the government's agendas and their failures.
You said the riots showed there was a societal black hole. What did you mean by that?
What I meant by that was that the riots, I think, were symbolic of a broken society. They were far right in the main, but underneath that, I think there was a societal black hole, a breaking of our society, which we need to mend. I'm convinced that the answer to it is delivery in government. So the best argument against the far right, the best argument against the easy answer, is to deliver, to bring about the change that we promised we'd bring about.
That's right. Two-tier Kia seems to acknowledge there are troubles. He says the solution is delivering in government, which suggests the cause of the problem is failure in government. I agree, Comrade Keir. And he says the far right, whoever they are, is the snake oil of easy answers. I think it'd be more accurate to say the use of the term far right to label concerned British citizens is the snake oil of lazy government. And any anger, which he labels far right, is a consequence of failure in government. You can't blame the Tories forever, Comrade Keir. And listen to this.
It doesn't matter what apparent motivation there is. This is violence. It is not protest. It doesn't matter what the motivation is.
That's right. He doesn't care what happened. He doesn't care. Okay? But it gives him the excuse to crush the dissent that terrifies him. The dissent of the average British man and woman. And by the way, we still haven't been told anything about the motivation of the Southport killer. What could it possibly have been?
Good honest men are going to jail for saying that integration failed. So do you think that we're really free if we're not allowed to say what we see? Starmer's a tyrant, but we won't be silent, 'cause he threatens his people. Starmer is evil, but we won't be silent, 'cause he threatens his people. Starmer is evil.
Now, once they had tried very hard to manage the news about these murders in Southport, and they'd lied and patronised the entire British people in the process, what two-tier Keir and his cabal of apparatus chicks did next is truly chilling.
You know, everyone was angry because of what had happened. So those 3 little girls, the whole world was angry. My husband was then saying, you know, the government keep letting them come in to our borders. You know, kids are getting raped, filmed, what followed, things like that. You know, they're taking all our NHS, they're getting rehomed. You know, everyone coming in is just being given everything. And then things like this are happening in our country.
So what is it exactly that your husband has been accused of?
On the Saturday after Southport, he just put a status up saying the Daresbury Next, which is a hotel close to where we live, which have got immigrants and asylum seekers in there who were getting rehomed. So he weren't inciting that he's going there to do anything. He was just saying, with all what's going on, that's the next place that will most probably happen. People will start rioting and stuff. But he didn't put that. He just put, it's going to be the Daresbury next. Okay. Then people commented underneath his post, and he just put, it's the government's fault. If they stopped letting them in the borders, all this wouldn't be happening.
Okay, so he was being vocal on the immigration issue.
Yeah.
He went there for his daughter and for his little sisters to stand up and say, like, enough's enough.
With Jack being a father himself, he's a first-time dad to a little girl. He felt it, like, it touched him emotionally, what was going on.
When he was there, he was waving his flag. He didn't say anything racist. He wasn't shouting abuse. He wasn't swearing.
There's actually numerous videos of the police telling Jack he has to put his flag down. He's not allowed to hold his country's flag. Jack saying to the police, listen, I'm not here for no violence. I haven't came for violence. I've came for a peaceful protest.
The reason why he was arrested was because the police blockade, or whatever they call it, where they all have the shields, they ran and pushed his mum over, Julie, his mum, she's 68-year-old. They pushed her over, trampled over her, she was on the floor, they trampled over her. Lee seen this and then obviously tried to get through the police to get to his mum, who were on the floor. They were whacking him with a shield, sprayed him with CS gas, and he was saying, look, my mum's on the floor, I just need to get to my mum. When he was being, after he just got arrested, when he was being held round the back of the Bluebell, the police officers were saying, I don't even know why you've been arrested, because his mum were there as well, obviously. All her face was bruised. They could see that she'd been injured, badly injured. I don't know if he were a sergeant or just a normal police officer. He was saying, I'll ring my inspector and see if we can let you go, because I don't think it's I don't think it's serious enough to be arrested. It's like you said, if it were my mum, I would have done the exact same.
Obviously, we went home and we thought everything was fine, because obviously Jack didn't do nothing violent at all. And then that's when, exactly a week later, the police had knocked on the door, and then that's when he got arrested.
So they started booting my door through. My little girl was screaming in the garden,
It's all right.
screaming in the garden, so my neighbour took her away. So I asked them to stop beating my door down and asked them what they were here for, and they wouldn't tell me. And I said, have you got a warrant? And they said, we don't need to give you one. And I said, my back door's open and my back gate, you can go down there, stop booting my door through. So at that point, when he stopped, Chris was coming out with the police, and then they went in and raided my whole house, looking for his phone and took the kids' iPads and stuff.
And was your little girl still there?
She'd been taken to my neighbours, but she was just crying her eyes out.
How long exactly did he get?
He got 5 years, a year taken off. Then they took into consideration his health and his mental health, and then they gave him 32 months.
He was sentenced to 3 years, 4 months, and also a 10-year criminal behaviour order.
You're not going to see your partner Lee now for 3 years, 4 months?
No.
How do you think you're going to cope with that?
I'm absolutely gutted, Sammy.
It's broke the family up. Like, it's his daughter, he's a first-time dad to a little girl. Like, he's got Christmas coming up, it's the first one where she understands things. He's going to miss out on our first Christmas, he's missing out on our second birthday. Like,
she's just like a little shell. She's usually a bubbly little girl. She's just not herself. She's not the same little girl. She just, like, she sits and just stares into space and stuff.
So with the most recent atrocity in Southport, and regardless of the murderer's motivation in this particular case, it was the last straw. People were angry, not surprisingly. Not just about the Southport murderers, but about years of having their legitimate concerns about mass immigration being completely ignored. They're angry about two-tier policing and politicised judiciaries. But Labour cannot afford to have pesky voters asking questions about the consequences of open borders, mass immigration, and the incompatibility of some ideologies with our culture. So they create a different story. They turn everyone's attention to their imaginary monster, the far right, the fictional dragon they pretend to slay.
There's a lot of people that have branded people like Lee as a far-right racist thug. Is that true?
No, definitely not. While ever I've been with him, he's never been racist.
It's horrible. They just put lies out there.
it's absolutely ridiculous, just everything that they've written. It's like, there's actually an article about Jack that calls him far right as well, and obviously when I've spoke to Jack and made him aware of this, he's not happy. Like, he's kicking off, saying on the phone, he's saying, I'm not, they kind of just put me down as something that I haven't actually complied with. I haven't said that I am this type of person.
The last thing you would be is racist. And like every person, I think you should have loyalty to your country. And if there's something wrong with your country, why can't you speak about it?
And more fanciful than that, they blamed the English Defence League.
Missiles were thrown at riot officers and a police van was set on fire by a large crowd of protesters believed to be supporters of the English Defence League.
We don't know where they streamed in from, but they're believed to be supporters of the English Defence League.
How many people work in Wales? There's over 50,000 apparat chicks working in the Home Office alone. And no one told Two-Tier Kia that the EDL disbanded a decade ago. It hasn't been here for a decade. No one in MI5 reminded him that, 90% of the people that they're watching on the terror watch list, well, they follow Islam.
I am worried about the rise of the far right. I mean, we can see what's happening in Germany with the recent elections, see what's happening in France and other countries. And I'm worried about the far right because it's the sort of snake oil of the easy answer. I utterly condemn the far right thuggery we've seen this weekend. This is not protest. It is organised, violent thuggery. And it has no place on our streets. Mindless minority of thugs who thought that they could get away with causing chaos.
But this deception is not without consequence, Kia.
The following will not be televised.
and community leaders have been speaking to the police as well, because...
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
But I think, apologies for the language you're hearing, but
They're smashing up the people's cars. People are running.
Fucking hell! Leave him! The game out as well, fucking tools in your hands.
You know what, I disagree with that. Them people are not racist.
I don't know, a car, I assume, with people in it, and they assumed that they were EDL, apparently, I'm not sure. And that's why they all ran.
Kia, you brought violent Muslim militias out on the streets. You lied to them. You created this facade of this far-right English Defence League roaming the streets. Well, at least people can see that there's a militia there waiting now.
He has caused this divide between everyone. He has labelled us ADL, far-right, racists, but I think people are angry, and it's all down to Keir Starmer because he hasn't addressed why people are angry, why people are taken to the streets with such anger. I mean, these poor lassies, they're someone's babies, and I think that's why people are thinking it could have happened to our kids.
Yeah. And anyone who is even remotely concerned about mass migration and its impact on our way of life, well, channeling Naz Shart's retweet, you would all better shut up for the sake of diversity. Of course, the media clapped along with all this. They know there's no far right. They also know there's no EDL. Or maybe they're talking about those thugs who gathered in Trafalgar Square on July the 27th.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved someone like me.
Deflecting works, of course. Before the population could blink, and without them even realising, the headlines and the news were all focused on the imaginary monster, the imaginary far right. And everyone had stopped talking about the slaughter of innocent kids. It hasn't been mentioned again. It was totally forgotten. It was a successful government ploy. For me personally, they're working to blame me for the trouble on the streets.
Well, what we've heard, Julie, from a lot of the far-right figures is that these protests that we've been seeing over the last week are not about extremists, they're about ordinary people just having their say. Here's an example, and it's not the only one, from the man known as Tommy Robinson.
And probably the most influential instigator for all is Tommy Robinson.
For this to be hijacked by people lying on sunbeds in Cyprus.
It's been coordinated by a man who's just fled England.
The English Defence League have been giving me their phone number, give me their email. I mean, the fella who's associated with most is on a sunbed in Cyprus.
Tommy Robinson.
He hates Europe, but there he is enjoying the European sunshine and stirring up poison and hate in this country.
There's no truth in that. Bring the case against me. Bring the evidence. The evidence shows the total opposite. Not once did I call for violence, ever. I asked people not to be violent. Lads, you've got to remain calm. Look at our events in London. Totally peaceful, totally calm. Didn't matter. We were under attack by the media and politicians, by all of them. As far-right, racist, hooligans, all these things. A total appeal for calm. Try to remain calm. Just an appeal for calm, man. Bring the numbers. Bring the noise. But don't bring any violence, man. Let me movement come in. Galvanise the country. That's what we need to do. Unite people. Now, yeah, the level of violence, it won't work. Anyway, stay safe. Stop the violence, man. To the men committing the violence, lads, Those individual police officers who are coming out doing a difficult enough job have got families at home. They're ordinary people. Okay? A peaceful revolution is brewing in Great Britain. A peaceful revolution. Now, why are the British public angry? I want to pause and take a moment to answer that question. I want to take a moment to help Kia and his cabal of apparatus chicks, because he seems to know there are troubles, he admits it. There's troubles on our streets. But I fear he may have misdiagnosed the cause.
Well, it was publicised as being a protest against the lack of government action to deal with the increasing amount of stabbings and knife crime across the country, but in particular against the awful, atrocious, horrific, brutal murder of the 3 primary school age girls in Southport in their playgroup, which, like I think so many other people, I was incredibly upset and distraught about that. And I went there in that spirit. Intending to attend, and did attend, a peaceful protest. 8:45 in the evening, the police, the riot police, decided to just charge on the crowd. There was absolutely no forewarning, there was no announcement by the police, like on a megaphone or anything like that, to say, can you clear the area, can you move, because we're going to start arresting people. They didn't do that, they just started arresting people completely out of the blue, suddenly, without any notice whatsoever. And I turned round and I saw a police officer arresting someone, and then the police officer came towards me and arrested me, and I was handcuffed. I was handcuffed behind my back.
So you were arrested for standing in the street?
Basically, yeah. Well, absolutely, that was it. That was why I was arrested. And I did nothing, didn't resist arrest.
They're just arresting people for no reason. I'm literally now getting really, really worried.
I think this has been going on for a long time, with escalating concerns over rampant knife crime and stabbings and violence by some of the migrants and asylum seekers that is not being covered by the press at all because it doesn't fit their narrative. Censorship, fear and intimidation is the tactics of a dictatorship. It's the same as any dictatorial regime in the world. If you look at Venezuela, what's been happening there, the way they control their population, they send people to prison because of their political beliefs. This government isn't acting any differently from that. It may not be as extreme yet as that, but they're certainly headed in that direction.
We already know people are angry about the authorities covering up years and years of child rape gangs, mainly Pakistani Muslims. They are angry about two-tier policing. They're angry about politicised judges. They are angry when they see the police cowering before Islam in the name of diversity. Let's have a look at what else is going on.
Some of them, they're not screaming. It's like they wanted to be raped, you see. She also grabs you see, no more
like
crying.
She's enjoying it, you know, even though she isn't, but it's like she's enjoying it.
What about the consequences of what you're doing in terms of how that affects the person that's raped?
Yeah, the consequences, we look at that all the time, you know, because it happens, she might scream, you know, people might wake up. A lot of people, especially.
I'm not just talking about, I'm talking about the emotional effect, the physical effect it has on the girl.
Yeah. We might rape her and wake up tomorrow with viruses ourselves, like HIV, you know.
What about regretting what you've done to the girl?
I also do regret about it, because if she fell pregnant, what will be that baby's father? Who will be that baby's father?
But what about her personal feelings?
That's right, all over the country, unchecked migrants are raping and killing, and more unchecked migrants arrive every single day. Maybe this is the reason people are angry. Let's have a look at the rape statistics for the UK. Yeah, we're the rape capital of Europe. There might be a reason people are angry. Wasting money, killing pensioners.
Some breaking news from our end, actually. Channel migrant arrivals surged by 43%. That's from our Home and Security editor, Mark White. That's after 442 small boats crossed the Channel yesterday on Easter Sunday. That now brings the total for this year of 5,435 channel crossings since the beginning of the year. That's well in excess of the 3,790 odd who'd crossed the channel by small boat at this point in 2023.
We were getting daily updates of the numbers during the COVID pandemic, and actually that's an astonishing amount. Over 440 boats yesterday. The weather's calmer at the moment, a little bit calmer. This is only going to increase over the summer.
There are 1.7 million. That's a combined population of Glasgow, Cardiff and Nottingham. There are 1.7 million who are unemployed. They're not even looking for work. They're costing you and I, the taxpayer, £8.5 billion a year. That's the equivalent to a winter fuel allowance of £708 per year for every pensioner in this country. That might be a reason people are angry. Paedophile migrants. What about this?
You have been talking very graphically to some 13-year-old girls. How long have you been in the UK? For 2 months. She said her age is, do you want to see my dick? Yeah, do you want to taste it? You're asking other people's children to send them pictures of themselves.
Ain't me nowhere.
You facilitated a meet with a child for sex, didn't you? 13 years of age she was. You sent her pictures of your penis. Yes?
No me.
Not you. Who?
No me.
Who?
I don't know.
Off your phone?
I don't speak English.
Do you not speak English? No?
Yeah.
How long have you been in the country?
Next time for the guys. I think 3 months.
3 months?
No.
Do you want visa?
Don't finish it.
Do you think it's okay to say that you want to eat and kiss a child's pussy? Do you? You want to get a child to your house, a 14-year-old girl you want to rape and abuse.
You'd think they'd be on their best behaviour, but they're busy online grooming young children to rape within weeks or days of being in our country.
Kids were getting filmed by them from the residents that live in the Daresbury. Family members had rang the police and stuff. The police had come, they'd move them on, wouldn't take the phones or anything off them. People were getting followed from the Aldi by the illegal immigrants that are supposedly living in the Daresbury Hotel.
Okay.
But they're saying that there's no men or anything in that hotel, it's just all women and children.
Okay.
But,
have you ever seen any men?
Yeah, but the whole of our area know that there's men in there.
There's, for many years, been a lot of complaints about the hotel, about the immigrants that are staying there, the crime rate.
Yep.
There's also been reports that children as young as 12, 13 and 14 have been getting followed and harassed. What do you think to that?
I was talking to a couple of ladies there who were telling me that a daughter had been exposed, one were having a pee in bush round the lake and it was showing his bits to a 6-year-old daughter. She reported it, nothing got done about it. Another lady who I was speaking to, her daughter actually worked in the hotel and they used to follow her home every night.
That might be a reason people are angry. And you get locked up for tweets. If you object to any of this and speak out online in anger or with humour.
I was upstairs doing some work up in the attic loft space up in the house, and I had a massive bang. This was about an hour later. A massive bang, and I was like, what's that? So I started coming down the staircase from the loft, and another big bang. That was in the door flew up, and all these police came walking up the stairs with the taser out.
Kicked the door off.
Yeah, they'd used one of them big battering ram things that absolutely destroyed the door. And they came running up the stairs, one with a taser out, hands behind your back, blah blah blah. Okay. And so I went with them. As I walked outside, there was about 8 or 9 coppers. They were everywhere. The warrant was for inciting racial hate on social media. I actually thought I'd walk into court, he would get laughed at, and I would come back. I'd be back out of court. I spoke to the duty solicitor, and then he told me, "You are guilty, though, Lee. You're guilty of sharing this pictures on your social media, so you are guilty. So I advise you to plead guilty to what they're saying to you in court today." I'm like, "But I haven't done anything. There's no crime." And he's like, "You're guilty of sharing these pictures."
So let me get straight. You served 4 weeks in prison for sharing 3 memes.
Yeah, that weren't even illegal. I hadn't even broke the law. It turns out now that I haven't even broke the law. Had a good job, a good woman.
Do you think you'll ever get a good job like that back?
No, definitely not. No, I've got this on my record now, haven't I? I'll be lucky if I even get clearance and get my vetting back for the job that I did do.
The government is imprisoning people for their tweets. That might be another reason people are angry.
Our prisons are on the point of collapse.
So today, a new announcement that come September, thousands of prisoners can leave jail earlier than they would have otherwise.
Well, they can't lock up these angry tweeters because the prisons are full, so they have to release thousands of prisoners early. That might be a reason people are angry. And he's made space in the jail, but not enough space for the BBC's latest paedophile superstar, Hugh Edwards, busy buying photos of children as young as 7 being raped. Doesn't spend a minute in jail. The judge was concerned about what might happen to him on the inside. He should be. But no such concern shown for the right-thinking people of Britain tweeting their disgust at successive governments' failures. Every tyrant knows once you have created your imaginary enemy, you need to install fear in those in the population who are gullible enough to trust you. The number of people who still trust you and your government, Keir, is falling very fast.
Sir Keir Starmer's approval rating has plummeted to its lowest level on record amid a growing cronyism scandal. The new poll shows almost 2/3 of voters think the government is more interested in serving its own interests than those of ordinary people.
More people trust us, mate. I know he's watching it, which is great. And so, in collusion with far-left activists like Nick Lowles of Hope Not Hate and its cabal of Labour politicians, Hope Not Hate. It's a good name, that. Hope Not Hate. But they appear to me to be driven by hate, not hope. Well, in collusion with them and the legacy media, the story is pushed that 100 riots are planned across the country. But it's all a lie.
And this was one of the potential protest sites for the far right on that list that was circulated on Telegram.
Of course it was a lie. There was no riots planned. 100 demonstrations weren't even planned. Nick Lowles thought it was clever and the lie was funny. The government knew it was a lie. Hope Not Hate knew it was a lie. The papers knew it was a lie. But it didn't stop to consider whether it might be. But the lie was not without consequence.
I love him. I He needs an ambulance, so he does.
Samurai sword, you see? Is that sword?
I'm sure the police will be all over those machete-wielding thugs.
I mean, they didn't put the others that came out with machetes, knives, masked up. What happened to them? There's no... Them are not in the paper addressed as racist thugs. It's just they portray us to be bad people.
And Lowles tweeted about this. See, that wasn't true either. That stirred up racial hatred.
We were born here, we are Muslims, we will stand here, we will fight against EDL, we will fight our ground. Our innocent Muslim sisters are getting acid attacked, must get breaking, but everyone should be here. Fuck the EDL!
The top tier of Labour MPs in support resigned after that tweet. But Hope Not Hate is still a Labour-controlled disinformation unit. By the way, Mark Rowley, if you're still in the police when this film goes out, when are you going to arrest Comrade Lowles for spreading false rumours and inciting racial hatred? So Lowles doesn't get arrested for his lies, but Bernadette Spovroff, a Cheshire businesswoman who sent an erroneous tweet about the Southport murderer, she was arrested. She was held overnight. Then not released, but she was bailed pending further inquiries, which have since been cleared.
I had expressed my own views on the state of the country and its failure to protect innocent citizens, and that is still legal. But it's very clear that a vocal part of our society wants the opinions of ordinary people like you and like me suppressed. They say they support free speech, but they mean only the speech they agree with. They say they support dialogue, but only the dialogue that agrees with their worldview. And they say they want equality, but they don't mean for people who think differently to them.
Now, we've had nearly a year of violent anti-Semitic hate marches on the streets of Britain. The legacy media describes them as largely peaceful. Citizen journalist footage suggests that's a lie.
The only solution is jihad by the armies of the Muslim countries.
Listen carefully to what this guy here in the middle of the video says in a moment. Did you hear that? We are ready to kill you all, is what the man said. Let's have a listen to the rest of it. Take a look at how the police respond. The police stand there and do absolutely nothing.
You are racist, all of you. Okay, that's racist. No, take your hand. Take your hand. Take your hand. Take your hand. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that for me. You're messed up in your head, my friend. And you are nothing to me. All of you. Do it. Go on, then. Go on, then. Go on. Do it. Go on. What the fuck are you going to do? Attack me again. Again? What? What's the fight today, guys? And fuck the first. Go stay.
The Hamas marches were largely peaceful, just like this was a largely peaceful social services call-in in Leeds.
Jesus.
That's the police running away from Romani gypsies and Pakistani rioters in Hare Hills, Leeds, after a social services call turned violent. The Hamas marches were largely peaceful, just like this was a largely peaceful chat between armed police at Manchester Airport and a largely peaceful Muslim family. By the way, these men, they were released without charge when a baying mob of Muslims turned up at Rochdale police station demanding their release.
Immediately, every one of them officers needs to be arrested immediately. If not, then we will go to Plan B and you will see big protests, I promise you. Protests like you've never seen before.
The Muslims demanded the police are suspended. And guess what? They were. The police suspended. And the cowering police are now focused on finding the person who leaked the CCTV footage. Total insanity. Have the Islamic thugs who battered the police on camera, have they been charged yet? No, they haven't. And yeah, the Hamas marches were largely peaceful, just like the Notting Hill Carnival was largely peaceful. Here's the legacy media's headline on that one.
Last hour, they've given us an update that they've made 38 arrests and recovered 4 knives. And they said a man believed to be in his 20s has been stabbed. His injuries are not life-threatening. But overall, it's been a really peaceful and enjoyable day.
So, no swift justice for the Hamas rioters, for the Leeds rioters, the Manchester Airport thugs, or Nick Lowell's. I wonder why. And no swift justice for the killers of Notting Hill Carnival. That was just a cultural celebration, of course. So we know the police treat different groups differently. No credible commentator would dispute it.
In 2020, we had Black Lives Matter protests during COVID. During COVID lockdowns.
Yeah.
Sir Keir Starmer, now our Prime Minister, rushed to take the knee to express his solidarity with Black Lives Matter after they'd already injured 30 police officers during their protests, after they'd broken the law with the COVID lockdowns.
Yeah.
And Keir Starmer rushed to take the knee and he said, there are legitimate grievances here. This is about racial injustice, because rioting, on the left, remember, is the voice of the unheard.
Yeah.
This time around, the same Keir Starmer, despite us seeing videos on social media of Muslim gangs beating up white British kids on the street, walking around with knives and machetes, this time around Keir Starmer said, this is all far right, this is not legitimate, it's criminality, get these people into prison as quickly as possible. There was no discussion of legitimate grievances. There was no discussion of legitimate protests.
But now two-tier Kia appears to have ordered the stormtroopers to grab and arrest anyone, literally anyone, who protests or tweets against the government and what it's doing. Obviously, except for Hamas-loving protesters, anti-Semites, members of the Muslim militia. None of them.
This is the moment police raid the home of a mother and a son suspected of violent disorder in Middlesbrough.
Here comes the door, I'm going to put it in.
If you're involved in the disorder on that day, we will identify you, we will arrest you, and we will put you before the court.
National figures show 1,165 people arrested, 703 charged. Those figures, again, will increase.
Have the police made any high-quality videos of them arresting Muslims carrying machetes in the streets? Or men fighting with knives and machetes in our parks? Or a single grooming gang that have raped children? No, they haven't. They saved their high-quality videos for people saying mean words on Twitter.
We do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrest.
That the UK actually has a massive force of police officers scouring the internet for any repost, retweet, or original content that could theoretically incite whatever the government deems to be racial hatred. And if you engage with or repost that content, you are deemed so dangerous for society that they will arrest and prosecute you.
So this is another man being sentenced to prison for a Facebook post that he made, and in this video the judge tells you what he posted and how long he's getting in prison, and I'll let you make your own mind up. Have a look at this.
You went on to say that you did not want your money going to immigrants who, quote, rape our kids and get priority. Given the life of Riley, off the tax us hard-working people earn when it could be put to better use, come over here with no work visa, no trade to their name, and sit down and DOS, and then there's more people being put out homeless each year. They get top band priority on housing and many more reasons. This offence is so serious that an immediate custodial sentence is unavoidable. The sentence that I pass has been reduced by 1/3 to reflect your guilty plea. The sentence is one of 20 months imprisonment.
Every tyrant knows you can't run a totalitarian state unless the judges do what you tell them to. In Russia, North Korea, they're awarded dachas, second homes in the countryside. In England, you get honours for doing what you're told. Honours.
Let's be very clear. This has not been about protest. This has been about violence and thuggery.
Bewildered Yvette, tough on crime, tough on imaginary crime. Her message to the judges was clear. People who tweet dissent, they're criminals. That's what she said, judged before any trial. And those judges have been busy.
You have brought shame on yourself and the town of which you are a resident. You must be punished for what you did. The only mitigation, as I have indicated, is your guilty plea. Accordingly, the sentence is reduced to one of 2 years and 8 months imprisonment. I appreciate that will fall hard upon you as a senior citizen.
Most of these cases that I've been reading about, for example, the case of this poor man, David Springer, a 61-year-old who's been working as a train driver for 42 years, who's now taking care of his sick wife, who has been sentenced to jail because they wanted to make a sacrificial lamb out of him. They wanted to set an example to the rest of the UK. And that message was very clear. That message was, you don't get to disagree with us. You don't get to be present at these protests, because David Springer did absolutely nothing. And we have video footage of that. He was there. He, according to the reports, maybe shouted something at the police. Well, boo-hoo. Is that worth 18 months in jail? A mother of 5 being sent to 26 months in jail because she threw a can at the police? Is that proportionate? A man online who committed the crime of according to the government, inciting racial hatred because he posted one post on Facebook? Is that proportionate?
That's right. Bang. You're inside serving years. And let's take another look at some of the judges who sent people to jail for hurty words. That's right. Rape, steal and stab. Let's just put it down to cultural differences. It's community service for you, lad. Fence painting. Picking up litter for a few hours. So tell me how our judiciary are not politicised, how they're not compromised and a tool of the state. And to the judges, I hope you get the honours you've been promised, lads. Tin pot despot Kia, your political judiciary might be another reason people are angry. Maybe.
This isn't just two-tier policing. This is a two-tier political and social system that is routinely prioritising racial, sexual, and gender minorities at the expense of the majority.
Now, every tyrant knows the media is a tyrant's best friend. Well, the media that does what you want them to, they're your friends. Everyone else, they need to be shut down, which definitely includes us.
I would prefer that the conventional media was more powerful, because social media, it's, you know, the truth of the matter is it's got many great aspects to it in terms of the way people interact with each other, but in politics it's a bit of a plague.
That's right. They call it misinformation. You and we call it the truth. And the legacy media, they've been a cheerleader for mass migration agendas of successive governments. They've continually supported their open border policies. Just look at this.
والله الشعور وقت انحبست أنا شهر كامل بالسجن حسيت إنه أنا لو كنت بسوريا أو بالأردن كان أحسن لي صراحة يعني كنت لأنه ظلم بظلم وانحبست شهر.
That's right. The people held up to us by the media as shining examples, they all turn out to be rapists as well. More migrant rapists. But in the interests of balance, were the legacy media unlucky to choose the migrants as poster boys who turned out to be rapists? No, they weren't unlucky. The British aren't stupid. We all know people affected by these rapes. The unchecked illegal migrants you are actively ferrying into our once green and pleasant land. They're raping our daughters. They're killing, they're murdering.
So tell me about university. How did that start?
I only decided last minute that I wanted to go to university on my gap year a few months before. It was a very last minute decision. I just felt like I wanted a little bit of a change of plans in my life at that.
How long had you been at university before the attack happened?
2 months.
So not long?
Yeah, new city, new lifestyle.
Okay.
I'd first met this man, or seen this man, way back in the city centre.
Okay.
He'd followed me for a very long time before the attack.
Okay, so he'd followed you for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Then what happened?
So he just kind of grabbed me on the street and just kind of pulled me into the churchyard.
So he pulled you into the church?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
And then he kind of pushed me against, it was like a concrete block.
Okay.
And then just kind of pulled down my underwear.
I suppose it's every parent's worst nightmare. She's very innocent, very trusting. And I was told that I just needed to step back as a dad. You want to take control, and you want to get in there and fix all the problems. But on this occasion, I had to step back and trust the police.
And how long was it before you got to trial?
It was 6 months, exactly 6 months from the day he was remanded.
And did you go in and give evidence?
I did.
That must have been difficult. How was that?
It was difficult. It was especially difficult because I had my final exams for uni on the same week.
Wow.
My exams for university were over a 2-week period, and it fell in the same week as the trial. So I was in and out of the exam hall and in and out of the courtroom at the same time.
When the court case was going on, I booked all the time off. My intention was to go there for every day of the case, but I was pretty much told do not come by the police and the barrister due to the severity of it. My daughter closed down, didn't want any help. She was going to deal with this herself. It was very tough on her. She had lots of breakdowns. We had to drive up to where she was many times, 2, 3 in the morning to help her.
So tell me about the rapist, where we're living.
So this is what really gets to me, is he was staying in a hotel, and it's not far from a student village. Now,
so he was living very close by to the university?
Yeah, walking distance. The people that are coming illegally, but it says it, they're illegal. They've broken the law when they set foot on our shores. They've broken our laws. So at that point, they should then be detained and processed as criminals. But I don't believe they are. I believe they're being sent to hotels, being given money, and free reign to just wander freely, throughout the community.
He can apply for parole in just 8 years. If he comes out and he's not deported and he's going to be living here, what do you plan to do?
I plan on leaving the country within 7 years.
You just want to be away from him?
Yeah, I don't want to be out in the same
Do you think he should be deported?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's changed. Our relationship has changed. I don't think it'll ever be the same.
How has it
as it was.
changed?
We were quite close. We'd talk quite a lot. I was always there to support her and help her and guide her. But now, you know, I can message her and I could go maybe a week or 2 weeks before she'd respond to that message.
Okay.
You know, we'd play games, but we don't play games anymore. I'll call and she won't answer. She's a lot more distant.
How do you feel as a parent when Sophie leaves the house now?
Awful. It's really tough. So she does have a job. She does go to work part-time, and she does have to walk from where she's living to this job.
Okay.
And she can be walking home later at night now.
Okay.
It's not, and you know, we've got Find My Friends, so I can see where she is and when she's leaving.
Yeah.
And my heart just, I've had to stop looking at it, because if I you know, try and get an early night, because I've got to be up really early with work, and I Find My Friends and I can see that she's still at work, I'll then stay up and I'll follow her all the way home, and it's heart-wrenching, because then you'll see the dot stop, and straight away your mind goes to the absolute worst.
Is this an isolated case? Was this just one migrant in one city who has been housed and fed and paid for by the British public, who's decided to rape an English woman walking home? Or is this happening widespread across the country by migrants housed in hotels? Kia, maybe this is why people are angry. Maybe, and let's just have a little challenge here. Let's go on the internet and search a couple of cities. I could pick any city in the UK and search migrant, refugee, rape, and it will bring up cases. We simply don't have time to go through every rape of a migrant in every hotel for this documentary. But can you understand why people are angry? And if it's not the migrants in the hotels, just refugees and asylum seekers are literally raping in every single town and city across the UK. Kia, maybe these are the reasons the British public are angry. Now, the media told you the people in Hartlepool were far right for protests in the hotel. What they don't discuss is the fact that one of the migrants in the hotel left the hotel, committed an act of terrorism, murdered a 70-year-old British grandfather. His family will be angry. The community will be angry. Maybe the people in Bournemouth are angry because an asylum seeker come into our country, lied, like they all do, said he was 14 years old. What checks did you do on him? You put him straight in school with our daughters. So people in Bournemouth might be angry because their daughters were put in school with an adult who pretended he was a child. He went on to sexually harass children, chase people with knives, and later he murdered a 21-year-old in Bournemouth city centre. A Royal Marine was brutally murdered by this asylum seeker. Then the Home Office do their checks. Then we find out he wasn't 14, he was 19. He was a fully grown adult male, and you put him in school with children. Then we find out that on his way to Great Britain, he murdered 2 people with an AK-47 in Serbia. That's right, a cold-blooded killer with no checks, with no vetting, was put in school with parents in Bournemouth. People in Bournemouth are not angry because they're far right or they're racist. It's justified anger because you're failing them time and time again. It's a reality. This is justified anger because of government failures, but they cover it all up. They don't want to talk about their failures. Just blame it on the imaginary far right. No Keir Starmer, no the establishment, no the media, no the government. Every part of this is your fault. It's your failures. You've brought these people into our towns and cities. You've endangered our families. That's why the British public are angry. Look at this. Of course, any statistician will tell you correlation doesn't mean causation. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Let's have a look at the statistics for Sweden, since they opened their borders with rape as well. Literally, the graphs look identical for any country with open border mass migration, Islamic immigration and rape. Remember, there's 1.7 million unemployed and economically inactive migrants here right now, costing £8.5 billion a year. Anyone out there working right now, you're paying that in your taxes. He says nothing and does nothing about radical Muslim preachers.
How about the one who commits adultery, zina? What about the one who rapes a child? What about the one who drinks alcohol? Good or bad? This person, one person that commits all of these sins, he commits all of these sins on a daily basis. But he prays is better in the eyes of Allah than the one that doesn't commit any of these sins but doesn't pray.
King, Queen, House of Commons. If you accept it, then you're a part of it. You don't accept it, but you have to dismantle it.
He said, "O tribes of kuffar, O tribes of disbelievers, get out of his way. For we have come to strike you about its revelation. A strike that removes the head from the shoulders." Allah says, we will strike terror into the hearts of the kuffar. We will strike terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve. Why? Because they associate partners with Allah. Because they associate partners with Allah, that for which Allah never gave them no authority.
You got your democracy, we got our own Sharia. You got your own free mixing, we got our own nikah. No, we got our own economic system. We got our own foreign policy. We got our own deen.
Alcohol will be banned, drugs will be banned, pornography will be banned, gambling will be banned. But the money say that we know monarchy.
La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah.
He says and does absolutely nothing about knife crime on our streets.
Oh my God. Oh, they were swinging it.
He says nothing and does nothing about Islamic terrorism, jihad, Islamic courts, female genital mutilation, misogyny. He can't tell you what a woman is. He kneels for Black Lives Matter. I could go on and on, but he can dispense summary justice for anyone who disagrees with him. Remember how they hate scrutiny? They can't allow their agendas and failures to be exposed. Make a dissenting tweet, go to jail. Go directly to jail. Enter the UK illegally, come on in. How was your trip? Have a 5-star hotel. And now listen to this.
Both got put away for the riots, both been put in the same prison, both been put in the same cell. In the last 48 hours, the wing that they put them on was 90% Muslim. Both of them, one's been attacked in the shower, they took the shower heads off, battered him. When he managed to get back to his cell, his other mate had been completely battered as well. The family's obviously distraught and everything. They're making targets of them, as well as like examples of them. They're making targets of the lads. They did some damage to them as well.
That's right. Two-tier Kia is putting the unhelpfully outspoken citizens in prisons run by Islamic gangs. He's literally offering them up. Any concerned parents, any concerned British citizens, he put a target on them, calling them far-right EDL racists, and now they're getting hurt in prisons up and down our country.
Somebody who knows about these things told me that, any right-wing, far-right protester landing up in jail, they can expect a pretty cold reception from what he says are Asian gangs inside prison who will be looking out for them.
Keir told everyone they're far-right extremists. Their blood is on your cowardly hands, Keir. You disgust me. You disgust Britain. Now, every tyrant knows they can process people more quickly without dropping the facade. If these irritating political dissidents, if they just plead guilty. So they pressurise them. People who have never been in trouble with the law before and who shouldn't be before the law now. They shouldn't even been in court. They frighten these people into pleading guilty. It's easier for you, they say. Just plead guilty. It's easier for your family. Just say you did it.
His solicitor obviously stood up and said, what do you have on him? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything wrong, but the judge, he just didn't want to hear it. He was just shaking his head.
Obviously, some people have now been sentenced, your partner Lee to be one of them. What do you think to the actual sentence?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. 3 years, 4 months. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And what is it that he's actually being accused of?
He's being charged with violent disorder.
Did he plead guilty or not guilty?
He had to plead guilty, got told.
Who told him that?
The solicitors and his barrister. And then when he was in the custody, the police said that we'll have social services at our door and stuff.
For his best interest, it would be to plead guilty to the violent disorder, because if he didn't, the starting time was 5 years and he would have no time taken off for his guilty plea. So obviously Jack's fault. I'm already missing out on my daughter's Christmas, our birthday, everything. So he put his guilty plea in.
They'll try to persuade you to plead guilty because then you'll get a reduced prison sentence. Your conviction will be downgraded. Then the headlines will say, oh, look, all these people who pleaded guilty, they must be guilty. And that's not why you pleaded guilty. You pled guilty in order to avoid a lengthier sentence.
Well, it's scared everyone. I mean, nobody wanted to even go out now because of the sentences these men have been given. I don't agree with the riots, the smashing the place up and everything else, but I do agree with free speech and you should be able to protest on the streets.
It's just like the post office scandal all over again. Plead guilty and it'll be easier for you. Innocent people suffering. These people are heroes. These people have sacrificed everything. These people are an example to each and every one of us. Actually, we have more than one problem. Our first problem is we're led by tyrants. People whose allegiance is to the World Economic Forum, not the British people. People who are vain and deluded enough to believe that they, and only they, the elite, they can create a global utopia, with them in charge, of course. The World Economic Forum has already published their plans.
This global reset is necessary because we have seen that our policies which we pursued before the coronavirus struck us, that those policies do not create the necessary inclusion of society necessary for harmonious societal development.
We are led by people who don't believe in borders, people who don't believe in nations, people who don't believe in freedom. These are people who are full of lust for power, people who are rapidly dismantling the cultural inheritance with which we were all blessed. Freedom, equality under the law, Magna Carta and democracy. These are people who want you to be dependent on the state so they can control you. We are led by globalists, totalitarians and communists. This is the main problem. These tyrants are also cowards. They're driven by fear. They fear so many things. Being exposed, losing power, the truth, Islam, and they fear we, the people. They are bewildered and frightened, and like any cornered animal that makes them dangerous. They lash out at their own citizens, vulnerable individuals. They're busy arresting children, but they won't confront Islam. They may be too frightened of what might happen if they do. Or maybe they don't know what to do about Islam. Or perhaps they don't care that Islam is incompatible with our way of life, because these communists care little for our way of life. Regardless, for now, they cower before Islam. They leave unchallenged the masked armed gangs, the mobs, the militias that wreaked havoc on the streets, because chaos serves their purpose. It gives them a reason to act against dissent, and the dissent for now is from the British people, tweeting about the government's failures. And right now, of course, our nation is crumbling under the weight of mass migration, legal and illegal. So many men from countries and cultures that will not assimilate, cultures that teach their children to hate the West. It's out of control, and it serves the purposes of the globalists, the totalitarians, Kia and his apparatchik communists. Mass migration is part of their plan. So, to the people of the United Kingdom, I'm afraid the picture is grim. Our country is in peril. We are led by tyrants and cowards. Our borders are porous. The government is imprisoning its political opponents. That's right. We now have political prisoners. Ordinary, law-abiding people imprisoned for their views. Let that sink in. We all need to understand the freedoms our forefathers fought for, the cultural inheritance with which we were blessed. Neither of these things, our freedom nor our culture, neither's guaranteed. We are only ever one generation away from tyranny. We have never had to live under a fascist or communist regime. That isn't luck. People fought and died to preserve our freedoms. Yet Tutir Kia, his Stasi police and his political judges, with their kangaroo courts and summary justice, their failure to apply the law when it suits them, they are trampling on the Magna Carta, that document that shackles the power of authority, that shields all free-born men and women against tyrants and dictators. As Thomas Fairfax declared, holding up the Magna Carta back in the 17th century, this is what we have fought for, and by God, it must be maintained. The principle that lies at the heart of the Magna Carta is that the powers that be, they must obey the law, and they must apply it without fear or favour. That all, including the members of the government, are subject to and equal before the law. Keir Starmer, you and your political bureau, your student union cabal of tyrants and cowards, you have failed more quickly than anyone could have predicted.
Do you think we have freedom of speech in our country?
No, 100% not. And I think that Jack's case just shows that we do not have freedom of speech in this country anymore. You you cannot say what you want anymore.
No, that's gone. I thought we might have had a little glimmer of it, but we haven't.
Yeah.
There's no such thing anymore.
We haven't got freedom of speech. You've got to really be careful what you say to anyone and everyone.
The UK is no longer a free nation. If you do not have democratic options to express your disagreement with the government, that country is no longer a democracy.
The process is the punishment, and it will silence millions. And when we are silent, that is the end of our free speech. And many people still believe that if they allow the government to micromanage their lives and be their single source of truth, then things will be okay. Until one day they don't agree with their government, and they find it isn't okay because they can't speak of it. Without free speech, there is no democracy. And without democracy, there really is only tyranny.
We are free-born English men and women. Your tyranny will fail. Sacrifices have to be made. The courageous political prisoners already know that. Men sitting in jail right now, they know that. And this government will be held to account more quickly than they expect. The tyranny we are seeing now has been years in the making. Blair, Cameron, May, Johnson, Sunak, and now Starmer. They're all subjects of the World Economic Masters and its totalitarian agenda. Years and years of small steps, controlling your speech, importing hell, taking your freedoms. So, the hour is upon us. The time is now. Each one of us must take a stand. We must build communities of resistance. We must organise politically. Conservative Labour, Lib Dems. We must drive every globalist from power. We must reclaim our nation.
This is very urgent business, ladies and gentlemen, I beseech you. Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing. You will be told you can't complain. Watch out for these symptoms. They are just symptoms of surrender. Resist it while you can.
We must resist while we still can.
Preaching, taking us for fools. One more boat to wash up your focus on winter fuel. The art of distraction from the issue at hand. A foreign invasion of our ancestral lands. They aren't all refugees, they aren't all fleeing from war. Most of them are fighting age men. What do you think they are coming here for? Shame on you, shame on you. We're not far right, shame on you. Tell the truth, shame on you, shame on you, shame on you, shame on you. Draped in new designer suits, paid for by Lord Ali. While you take the side of every minority, you brand the British people indigenous to this land as far-right racist thugs. Why can't you understand? They aren't all refugees, they aren't all fleeing from war. Most of them are fighting age men. What do you think they are coming here for? Shame on you, shame on you. We're not far right, shame on you. Tell the truth, shame on you, shame on you, shame on you, shame on you.